Hello and welcome to the Field Guides. I'm Bill and I'm here with Steve. Good afternoon, Steve.
Good evening, Bill, I think.
We're kind of on the cusp.
Where does that change over, actually?
So I stumbled a little there. And we're also here with Josh. Good evening, Josh.
Good evening.
And what we're going to do today is give you the experience of what it's like to be in the woods, in the field, and on the trail. Each episode, we pick a natural history topic, research the science behind that topic, and then take you out to a natural spot and share with you everything that we've learned.
Yeah, because I think in May we've had 3 topics already.
It has been a busy month.
Yeah, you guys
folks.
sound busy.
Yeah.
We got a lot of episodes in the can.
Yeah.
And this is one of those episodes that we love because we had to do very little research.
Yeah.
So we are here with Josh Balisteri from the Western New York Land Conservancy. He is the Stewardship Director.
Correct.
And we are at a site that we hope is going to be the future Bear Lake Preserve. And the Western New York Land Conservancy, longtime listeners might remember that we've had them on the podcast 3 times. And I like to point out that every episode that they've brought us on for has resulted in a successful acquisition of that property that we were talking about.
Yeah, we raise
Absolutely.
like millions
You guys are
sometimes.
1,000. We appreciate it.
Honestly, I think that would have happened completely without us. But we are happy to do our small part. So, Josh, why don't you give people a little bit of your background, tell them what you do, and then tell us about what will hopefully become the Bear Lake Preserve and the project.
I am the Western New York Land Conservancy Stewardship Director. So that role, essentially, I am the person who is kind of in charge of all of our conservation lands. So we have nearly 30 now nature preserves, so properties that we actually own and manage. And we're closing in on 100 conservation easements. So it's my job to manage all those conservation lands. Could be anything from doing the public access and recreation. I do trail design and build stuff, but also the hard science kind of things. We do a lot of ecological restoration work that I oversee. So really dynamic, really fun job. I feel lucky to have it. But yeah, that's kind of my role. Once we as a land trust protect land, stewarding that land is how we take care of it and ensure that it's in good shape for future generations.
Very cool.
So how did you end up with this job?
Good question. So I feel like my nature nerd origin story is pretty typical. I kind of had a really intrinsic interest in nature since I was a little kid. I think I used to walk around with this accordion folder of animal facts when I was 7 years old and like pass them out to people, and I'd like write up summaries myself of giraffes. And so wildlife was definitely my first love, but kind of carried that interest through young adulthood. I was lucky enough to get out just around Western New York, hiking a lot with family, paddling, camping. Kind of realized that was my passion. I always felt more comfortable in the woods than sitting in 4 walls. So I knew that from a young age. I think at 14, my dad showed me a pamphlet for the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, and kind of knew that's what I was doing as soon as I read that. So went to SUNY ESF. Great decision. Got a degree in natural resource management. Got a couple minors too, one in recreation resources and protected area management, and then another one in forest resource management. So awesome school, kind of a plug, ESF plug there, but it was just a great decision. It's cool because you're out in the field 20-30 hours a week there, and got to spend a month and a half in the Adirondacks at like field boot camp, basically. It's called the Ranger School. Just got a really great set of foundational skills. Got hired as a private sector consulting ecologist right out of college. Spent some time in Virginia Beach doing some ecological consulting down there. Continue that career up in Buffalo, and always kind of had my eye on the land trust field, because actually at ESF, professor started talking about land trusts, and in my opinion at least, permanent land protection is the most, or close to the most important thing we can do in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss. So that's always where I wanted to focus my time and energy. So I had my eye on land trusts in general, and was super lucky that combination of hard work and luck. I moved back as an ecologist, working in the private sector, doing a lot of wetlands work, and knew I really wanted to get into the land trust field. Really since the time I was in college, I just associate most with that mission with my personal values, and kind of always thought I would have to move somewhere random in the country to do that work. I actually used a template from the Northeast Wilderness Trust, which is a really awesome organization that works out in New England and Eastern New York, as my like dream job, and it was a stewardship director at the Northeast Wilderness Trust. And I applied to that with absolutely no business applying to the job. But the craziest thing was our current executive director, Marisa Rigi, she was the current supervisor of that role when I applied to it. out of college, so I always give her a hard time. She put me in the no pile at some point, which she absolutely made the right call at that point in my career. But yeah, I eventually, this opening came at the Land Conservancy, and knew it was my dream job, and it was at home. So
Yeah.
really couldn't feel any luckier and more excited to do what I do. It's a really dynamic job. I could be painting parking lot lines one day and then out in a swamp doing hardcore vegetation surveys or breeding bird surveys.
We're talking
the
to two
next
guys
day.
in the woods.
We're talking to two guys in the woods, which is great.
All right, so now give us an overview of this place and why is the Western New York Land Conservancy focused on it?
And why are there so many toads? This is the most toad episode I've ever seen.
Yeah, so we are at what we hope to be the future Bear Lake Preserve. This is a 311 acre parcel in Chautauqua County, New York, that honestly conservationists in this area we've had our eye on this for years and years now.
Twirling your mustaches?
Literally. So it's been on people's radars for years because it's this 311 acres, first of all. In land trust world, in Western New York, we have really small parcel sizes. So we have this really fragmented landscape, and the average private parcel lot is 70 acres or so.
Oh, really?
So that's something we come up against when we're trying to do big, like our Western New York Wildway landscape scale conservation work. We have really small parcels here, so all the work it takes for one single conservation win or closing, that effort's similar whether it's 200,000 acres or 70. So we have to do a lot of work to connect big areas.
Yeah.
So when there's a 311 acre parcel, everybody's looking.
You're right.
And that's been on our radar for a long time. And it's not only the size, it's what we're going to talk about, I'm sure, today is this mosaic of lake-associated wetland complex. So there's a lake here. It's called the Bear Lake Preserve because there's a lake. So there's a naturally formed glacial kettle lake here. I think you guys have probably talked about kettle lakes, but basically,
Do a quick refresher.
I'll do a quick refresher. So 12 to 14,000 years ago, the glaciers are retreating northward, and there's big chunks of ice kind of falling off as they're retreating. And there's also all this glacial outwash material. So silt and rock and soil, that's also kind of sloughing off that same backside. So basically these giant ice cubes get buried in all that glacial outwash. But once that ice is receded, the climate starts changing, they melt. And where that negative space was, where that ice cube was, there's a big depression in the ground. The water table fills that depression and you have a glacial kettle lake.
I like that description. I don't think I've had one before with ice cubes involved.
Yeah, I don't know, you know?
It works. And
works.
sometimes those might become bogs or
Yeah, absolutely.
if
So
there's no inflow or outflow.
So the cool thing is, it's made this kettle lake, Bear Lake, but the craziest part of this property, and what you guys probably noticed when we were just looking at it from across the lake, a vast majority of the shoreline, most of which we'll be hopefully purchasing here, is in a natural state. So you're looking at trees, you're really looking at a lot of this shrub swamp complex, rather than cottages, docks, houses, restaurants, bars, which a vast majority of inland natural lakes in New York are made up of.
Yeah, right.
not just New York.
And not just New York,
Yeah.
most of the eastern US, right? Like
Say shout out to Hoax. It's a good restaurant.
including the Great Lakes, which we'll talk about. But,
Right.
so there's this massive, beautiful, intact wetland mosaic. There's shallow water marsh, deep water emergent marsh.
Did I notice
Silver
a bunch of
maple ash.
standing dead trees? Or sorry, standing dead wood anyway?
Yeah, so what you're seeing there is green ash, which has been
Oh, makes
ash board.
sense. Yep.
So a lot of the canopy trees that can grow in this mucky soiled, mucky / peaty, it's kind of like not a peat mat, but it's mucky, so it's technically a swamp. That's gonna be green ash, silver maple, and red maple. So
I
a lot of the
published
trees here are those.
I published the local green ash genome.
Oh, cool.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember when you were looking at ashes. That's right. You're the one.
I'm the one guy.
Well, can you fix them?
No.
So yeah, there's just this mosaic, this really soft edge of natural shoreline here, which is totally rare. The size of this property is totally rare. And the real cherry on top is that this parcel is directly adjacent to 2 other Land Conservancy nature preserves. And then there's also a couple preserves that our partners at Everwild Land Trust own. They have a chunk of the shoreline as well.
Oh, wow.
They also are in the process of potentially protecting another property that are all directly adjoining. So it's not just this
Nice.
300 acres. We will, if we can protect this property, we will have a 1,000 acre wilderness complex here.
That's insane. And give people an idea of where in New York it's located. 'cause
Sure.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, so we're essentially, Chautauqua County is the southwesternmost county in New York State. And we are kind of in central to kind of basically central Chautauqua County, but pretty close to Lake Erie. So we're actually, as the crow flies, probably 10 to 20 miles from the shores of Lake Erie here. So pretty cool, and actually the height of land that divides the Mississippi watershed and the Great Lakes watershed is right down the road here at Floating Fen Preserve.
Oh, I remember we talked about that.
Yeah.
On one of the episodes.
Yep. So that Chautauqua Road there, if it flows down the Portage Escarpment, it's going into the Great Lakes and out to the Bay of Labrador, and if it flows on the other side of the road, it's going out to the Gulf of Mexico. So.
Wait, is there any way that this road also goes through College Lodge? Because I swear that's the episode that it came up on.
I think so.
Yeah. It is at College Lodge too.
Okay.
And this is that line that runs through all these protected lands. So just kind of a crazy gem of a property by itself, but then how it fits into the landscape scale just makes it even more amazing.
And I feel like I have to mention, we don't have to talk a lot about it now, but this is also part of the larger Western New York Wildway
Correct.
that the Land Conservancy is working to construct, this mosaic of connected wildlands from the Pennsylvania-New York border all the way up to Lake Ontario.
Correct. Yep.
So it's this important puzzle piece.
It's a really critical puzzle piece, and it's one of the puzzle pieces we call a core area because there's so much intact habitat in this area. It's more so than some of the linkage corridors that connect the core areas of the Wildway. So definitely a cool thing to check out on our website if you haven't heard of the Wildway, but it's our landscape scale initiative to make this wildlife corridor from the PA line all the way up to Lake Ontario and eventually connect also east to west into the Adirondacks and beyond.
Yeah, so I know we got a lot of ground to cover still, but why don't we give people now at the top of the episode, like if they want to get involved right now and look it up while they're driving, can you tell them where to go?
That is the only place I listen to podcasts too. So, so the best place to learn about this property is our website, so WNYLC.org. You can also use WNYLC.org/Bear Lake. And it's going to cost us about $1.5 million to protect this property. We're already halfway. So we really need help getting to that finish line, and hopefully by the end of the episode you'll really understand why. The other thing I wanted to mention is just that the community that does live around Bear Lake here, especially the landowners on the shoreline, have been really involved in safeguarding this lake in the past and are really supportive of conservation here. And they even spent some time with DEC doing aquatic invasive treatments out there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so a couple of those community members, especially Bob and Ann Deming, we wanted to give a shout out for their love of this lake and desire to see it conserved.
On one of the visits, Josh, that I was with you when we went to visit Floating Fen.
Yeah.
Wasn't it, we passed by Bear Lake and like one of the cottages, Lucille Ball stayed in or something? Is that right?
Something like Chautauqua County is like Lucille Ball land.
It is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, there was something like that.
All right.
When we went to Floating Fen, yeah.
Very cool.
I don't know the history though.
I'll put it in the episode notes.
Yeah. I just want to walk you guys over through this margin here. This is kind of where you get into wetland right from this hemlock forest.
So we're stepping off the trail and we can see some standing water mixed in with the false hellebore, these emergent aquatic plants.
Yeah, so it's funny here when you're looking out, it's kind of hard to tell if you're looking at a swamp or a marsh.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of these trees, a lot of them we talked about are dead green ash, but there's also a lot of totally living silver maple, a lot of this really cool Martian royal fern that is a really key anchor plant here. But this is more of a marsh here now that the dieback of this canopy has gone backwards in time. A lot of the New York State communities that we're on the lookout for, which there are pockets of here, like one called Silver Maple Ash Swamp, is a little bit deeper and that has more of a closed canopy forest. There's also a lot of beaver influence here too, so that can create more emergent habitat. But super biodiverse, in really good condition with native herbaceous plants, graminoids, forbs, just really cool.
What are graminoids and forbs for the...
So graminoids are your sedges, rushes, true grasses. Forbs are broadleaf flowering vascular plants, non-woody herbaceous plants essentially.
So graminoids are for nerds.
Exactly, which in my intro I was going to say I consider myself an ecologist, not a botanist, ornithologist, etc., because I'm like a compulsive generalist. And if I'm pulling a hand lens out, I'm not pulling a hand lens out. Carex SP is the way for me.
I'm the same way.
I've only met a couple people that like specialized in Carex, for example. Like
really
it's a serious business.
Oh yeah. No, I tell people the story when I used to work at Beaver Meadow, and when I left to become a teacher, the director who took over said, "Oh, we're having a workshop with folks from the DEC to look at wetland plants for wetland delineation." He's like, "Do you want to come and lead a hike on wetland plants?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure." I know about wetland plants, but there were people from the Western New York Botanical Society there. And I went on one of their walks first.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know nothing. Because they were just looking at every sedge and rush and grass that they were finding along the way. And like, they had all this information right at their fingertips.
I will say, when your job is wetland delineation, though, like that's the way you delineate wetlands. At least one of the ways is by the plant.
But a lot of these people were amateurs teaching the professionals.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
And that's just pure willpower when you're out there using a hand lens or a microscope for a lot of these plants, whether it's bryophytes or graminoids or whatever.
Oh,
I'm
by the way,
impressed by it.
I also thought I was good up until I started working with aquatic macrophytes. And then it was a whole different world. I ended up going to some workshop by Eric and Barry Hellquist. They're like the guys that wrote the key on aquatic macrophytes. And I was like, I guess I just never go in the water. And it's just like all these plants that I just like, it was all alien to me.
And I use the word nerd, not in any type of derogatory sense. Like,
oh
my God.
I don't either.
I wish I could be that.
Right.
It's incredible stuff.
I wish I could be out on a boat with a hand lens and a flora, just keying these things out. But
I didn't have any idea.
That's when I'm like, all right, I'm going to go birding or set up a trout.
Hey, look, a veery.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think this is a good spot to give people somewhat of a mental picture of the lake, because we were looking at visual shots, and it's kind of an elongated teardrop, sort of, kind of at an angle going from northwest to southeast. And do I have it right? Kind of the north shore, I know it's angled, but the north shore is developed. And then really all that south shore, like looking at it from a map, you're like, whoa, how did this happen that this whole entire lake wasn't developed? Because you go drive by so many lakes, even out here in relatively rural areas. I think of places like Lime Lake in Western New York, where it's completely encircled by development. It's a beautiful spot, so it just makes total sense that people are like, hey, I'm going to want to put a waterfront house right on the water.
Humans love water. And it is amazing. And I think part of that is it's very hard to develop here. We're standing here on the edge of this upland hemlock swamp. We're actually standing in front of this really nice cucumber magnolia. But we're looking out onto this seasonally wet, high water table emergent marsh here, which I think is just really hard to develop. I mean, we'll talk about wetland loss later on, but it's really hard to develop these areas. But it's definitely a gem. Like I don't know the history back of how this was left in the condition it was. This road that we walked in on is actually relatively new. The last landowner put that in, did a little bit of logging in this hemlock forest, but otherwise this is like a really, really pristine property. It's kind of amazing.
So we could see why people were eyeing it up.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you made that comment about this natural shoreline. So I've got a little quiz for you guys.
Okay.
Oh boy.
So 67% of Bear Lake, from my approximation of GIS desktop analysis, is in natural condition. Wow. Can you name any lakes, naturally occurring lakes in Western or Central New York, that you think are more than, say, 10% natural shoreline? So, which I forgot to mention this. I used an anchor study to develop this. So there was a study in 2010, the Chautauqua Lake Watershed Management Plan, that was done by the Chautauqua County. 90% of the Lake Chautauqua shoreline is developed. So I went through all the lakes west to east in Western New York and Central New York and just kind of approximated how much developed land there was, knowing that Chautauqua Lake is what 90% looks like.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you guys think of ones that have significantly more than 10% natural shoreline lakes in Western New York.
This isn't multiple choice?
It's not multiple choice. Just name out a few and then I'll go through them.
Honeoye Lake.
Honeoye is not on my list.
Okay.
But I feel like that would be so unlikely.
Developed or undeveloped?
Developed.
That could be totally right.
Are there any that like we've looked for like carnivorous plants at? Because obviously like Menden Pond isn't going to count because it's a pond.
Right.
I'm trying to think of any lake that we might have gone to.
Hanging Bog.
There's a couple. There's a couple that I believe are in the state they're in because there's state protection around them, and they're associated with the city of Rochester's water supply.
Oh, okay.
And they're very undeveloped. Do you want to hear those two?
Yes.
So that's Hemlock and Canadice Lake, two of the Finger Lakes.
Hemlock was one I was trying to think of.
Those are almost fully undeveloped. A lot of state land around them. There's one other lake that has significantly less development around the shoreline than those two that I could find. I may have missed some, but I kind of went through any naturally occurring lake that's obvious on a map with GIS.
There's one more you said?
There's one more.
Can you give us a hint? Anything that might get us closer?
You're standing at it.
Well played.
Nice.
So I'll go through this list really quick because I think it's really interesting. So first lake I said it was Chautauqua, 90% developed. Silver Lake, another Finger Lake, right around 90%.
See, I would have counted out the Finger Lakes for some reason.
As
Not being totally developed in some way.
no.
They're very developed.
Very developed, yeah.
Silver, so speaking of Finger Lake, Silver Lake.
I'm saying more developed.
That's what we're saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So these are all 90%-ish developed.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
less than 10% natural shoreline. So Silver, Canisius, Canandaigua, Juanita, Lamoka, which are associated with the Finger Lakes, Seneca, Owasco, Otisco, Cazenovia, Onondaga, all well into that 90% developed shoreline. Mm-hmm. So now I'm getting to the ones where there's more than 10%, but it's still highly developed. So Oneida Lake, big lake in central New York. There's 3 Mile Bay Wildlife Management Area there that at least gives it some natural shoreline, but it's still up into that kind of like 70% developed range. And then Cassadaga Lakes, which are just right to the east here, also have some pockets of natural shrub swamp shoreline. But I thought it was an interesting picture. There's 3 lakes that I could find with some quick analysis, obviously not hard science here, that were more than 10% undeveloped.
Well,
Yeah.
One of those lakes you mentioned, I'm trying to remember. There's a great book for listeners who are interested in the history of endangered birds of prey and the efforts in New York State to bring them back, called Flight Paths. And I want to say Hemlock Lake, or one of the lakes you mentioned, was one of the first hacking sites for bald eagles.
Oh, cool. I could definitely see that. They're in really good shape. Like
Right.
forest well outside of the floodplain, intact still there. So I could
Yeah.
definitely see that.
It was a great book, but
Yeah.
I'll put that in the episode notes too.
Cool.
I know we said it quick, but do you just want to say what GIS is really quick?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
GIS is essentially a mapping software that we use in the conservation and a lot of other professional fields. It's geospatial information systems, so it's, which I hope I got that right. Speaking of ESF, yikes. But
It's just GIS.
It's basically a mapping tool that we use to do cartography, do measuring, and look at essentially the world spatially. So
Right. And
it's
the
really
two-
powerful.
The 2 primary ways to do wetland delineation is one like a GIS like kind of satellite version,
Remote
and then the other
sensing,
one
yeah.
is on the ground looking at the actual like plant species and things like that, right? So
Right. And that program also allows you to take field data and upload it and use it in your map system. So whether I'm out designing, building a trail, or doing inventory of this ecological community, it's kind of the system we use for that.
Yeah, a really statistically powerful kind of.
Yeah, super powerful.
Yeah.
Lots of people have careers just in GIS because it's this really complex, powerful tool, and really gives us a lot more at our disposal now as resource managers.
So is this a good spot? Because, in the title, we haven't decided what we're going to call this yet, but I'm sure in the title we're going to make reference to the fact that we're going to be talking about inland coasts. And when you guys first approached me about this at a meeting, Steve wasn't there, and just that term in my head, inland coast, it like took a second. It's like
Yeah.
atheist priest. Like, wait a minute, what?
Right.
Punctual Steve. No, I'm just kidding. I was late today.
Punctual Josh
somehow
would be a good joke if you knew me too.
somehow the roles were reversed for once.
But just doing like a little research into it, like blew my mind into how much of this freshwater inland coastland we've lost.
Yes.
Like as you were just alluding to with
Right.
these lakes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just talking about the little lakes.
I'm just talking about inland lakes. We all have the Great Lakes too, which is a whole story in and of itself. But yeah, it's losing that natural shoreline and the associated wetlands that would have softened the edge of that shoreline and led into the uplands. So that's what's really intact here that's cool is you have the lake, the aquatic habitat shoreline, and then this beautiful mosaic of transitional wetland habitats that get us onto where we're standing now in the
Ecotones.
uplands. Ecotones, yeah.
Yeah.
And so where we're standing right now, this is going to continue all the way to the shoreline.
Exactly,
So we're
yeah.
at the inland shoreline, and then all the way out to where the water opens up is the, what would you call it? Regular shoreline. I don't
So
know.
we're at kind of the ecotone of upland to wetland, and then the ecotone of wetland to aquatic habitat is beyond what we can see here.
And you mentioned the glaciers. You can really think about when the glaciers left. There was this mosaic of, you had the Great Lakes, but then throughout New York State and the surrounding areas, you had this mosaic of these kind of inland coasts
Yeah.
of freshwater swamps and marshes and lakes, all feeding into the Great Lakes.
Right.
And then people come in and they're like, hey, I want to live by the water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to develop this.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, if you've ever spent time, we're in canoe country here in Western New York. If you ever spent time paddling or hiking around the Adirondacks or some of the parks in Canada, like Algonquin Provincial Park, if you go on a paddle trip there, you're kind of seeing this pattern of softened wetland shoreline. You'll go through a bay and there's an emergent marsh. You'll go through the next bay and there's some fen habitat. So there's places where that you can still see that, but Western New York typically is not one of them, really, other than here.
Right.
So
a lot of farmland here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's when we talk about wetlands loss, most wetlands are drained for farmland and development. So, and that's the case across the board.
So I did look up a few studies.
Yeah.
And just one that I found fascinating. There was a big study from 2000, and it was in Nature.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about the importance of coarse woody debris. And they kept referring it into the paper as CWD.
CWD. Shout out to our last
Too
episode.
soon.
Right. And I'm like, wait a minute. But they just showed that residential shoreline development reduces all that by factors of 10 to 100 times. And that growth rates of fish dropped significantly.
Yeah.
Because all of that coarse woody debris, it just provides all of this place for invertebrates and other things to be.
Yeah.
And to feed those fish who are instead having to expend way much more energy to go look for food.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to come down hard on lakeshore development. Like, I love sitting by a lake just as much as
Same.
anybody.
Absolutely.
But when you have a piece of property like this and you look at the importance of these habitats for wildlife, it's like we got to hang on to the little bit we have left.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I kind of like the term nursery water for what you're referring to there, where these shallow transition zones on the edge of aquatic habitat, that's what's good reproductive habitat for fish, amphibians, aquatic insects. That's really what they evolved to use as their reproductive zones. Provides this kind of safe haven for younger animals to avoid predation. And when we harden our shoreline, so a study in 2021 on Lake Erie, 56.9% of the Lake Erie shoreline is hardened artificially. So bluffs, riprap, boulders, cottages, bars, docks,
Shore walls.
shore walls. So there's none of this soft nursery water anymore, where historically all of the Great Lakes were enveloped by this massive sea of marsh, fen, mosaic.
God.
Bear Lake is really a small, I wanted to talk about Lake Erie because Bear Lake is kind of like a little mini version of like what an inland lake in this area might look like. And it always fascinated me what the Great Lake shoreline must have looked like with these shallow lagoons
and all the wildlife
and all
that must have
nursery
been
habitat.
there.
Yeah.
Pretty good fishing.
Yeah.
Well, people talk a lot about like the Amherst area previously being all like marsh and swamp. And,
Sure. And actually that silver maple ash swamp I've mentioned a couple times, the Great Bear Swamp up in Amherst, there's an example of that habitat there. That
Love Great
ecological
Bear.
community. Yep.
All right, so why don't we walk a little bit and you can tell us the fun story about wetlands loss.
But before that, I mentioned I'm kind of fascinated by this pre-European contact Lake Erie situation. I just think it'd be so cool to see what that was like. Basically this giant living margin that surrounded Lake Erie and other Great Lakes, but Lake Erie being shallow really provided a lot of opportunity for that kind of nursery habitat we just talked about. And also one of the most protected and southerly Great Lakes had a lot more kind of southerly and biodiverse species than like, say, the North Shore of Lake Superior.
Right.
But that big envelope of marshes, fens, swamps that surrounded Lake Erie was estimated to be somewhere around 300,000 acres, depending what you read. And there's just these huge broad zones of shallow water, fine textured substrates, all that nursery habitat we talked about, which supported what at the time would have been one of the most biologically diverse fisheries in the world. So I just thought that was really interesting to picture as a Great Lakes area resident.
So I actually do have a study that talks about shoreline hardening, which you mentioned before.
Yeah.
I just saw that. So this is from 2001. And in this study, they used aerial photography paired with on-the-ground boat surveys.
Okay.
And they looked at hundreds of lake sites, and they were trying to quantify the loss of emergent plants and floating leaf vegetation beds caused by things like retaining walls and docks and adding beach sand. And they calculated a 66% reduction in emergent and floating leaf vegetation density along those developed shorelines. And they said, on average, for one average sized residential lot cleared at the water's edge, an average of 150 square meters of emergent vegetative biomass was lost permanently.
Wow.
So just from one average size lot.
Wow.
So, and we're standing here now on the south shore,
Yes.
the south shore of Bear Lake.
Ish.
Yeah, and we're looking across, and I mean, there's these beautiful houses and cottages on that north shore,
But it looks
goes
different.
It goes right down to the water, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You see that? It's this hard line
Yeah.
instead of this super soft, like, if we look out here, you can really
Yeah.
see it. I mean, it's this
People-
really soft transition until actual upland.
People
Not
love
just
the
a mode.
water, but they don't want to walk through anything to get to it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why culturally, wetlands were kind of hated culturally for
Sure.
the fact that they were hard to navigate. Disease and bugs breed there. So there's a lot of just, especially in the 19th century, draining wetlands was just seen as progress and
Oh, yeah.
humanity marching forward, right? So we lost a lot of them then, which that's one of the topics I really wanted to touch on was this global and domestic story of wetlands loss. These are some of the most biologically diverse, productive ecosystems on Earth. For the reasons we've mentioned, a lot of them have been lost. What does wetland loss mean? It means drained, developed. Agriculture and human development, like houses, etc., are kind of how they disappeared, and that is done with drainage structures and drainage tile and all the irrigation systems of modern agriculture.
We're very good at draining wetlands.
We're very good at it. We're very good at it. So to kind of paint this picture, globally, since this is one of the kind of landmark studies by Ramsar, this is globally since 1970, we've lost 22% of global wetlands, just since 1970.
Oh.
That's 1.02 billion acres.
Oh my God.
So that's roughly the size of half of the continental U.S.
Wow.
Globally, since pre-industrial times, about 85% of wetlands present in 1700 were lost by year 2000. That's a UNEP study and also Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform of Biodiversity, which is like a big international panel. They say it's over 85% of global wetlands since 1700 have been lost.
Wow.
So that's just globally. Let's zoom in on the United States. Kind of an outdated figure, but another one that's since 1700, according to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the EPA, we've lost 53% of our U.S. wetlands in the lower 48. So over half of our wetlands are gone since 1700.
Okay.
And then just from another study, just from 2000 to 2019 in the contiguous U.S., 670,000 acres lost, so about the size of Rhode Island.
Just since when?
That range was 2009 to 2019, so a decade, 670,000
Oh,
acres.
Whoa.
jeez. We don't like to brag. It's kind of our superpower.
This is a really fun episode, right?
Yeah.
So then we're looking at New York State. We're standing at Bear Lake, southwestern New York State. We're at 60% wetlands loss in New York State, according to the DEC, which that's the kind of benchmark figure. Also kind of outdated, so we can kind of assume there's quite a bit more than that. And the other thing when we're talking about New York land cover data statistics, it's always going to be skewed by our giant, beautiful forest preserves in the eastern part of the state. So there's tons of intact wetlands in the Adirondack Forest Preserve, especially, and also the Catskill Forest Preserve. So that's really helping that number look less menacing.
Right.
But our ratio of wetland loss in western New York is much greater than that blue line. That 6 million acre Adirondack Park really helps this look better.
Right.
But it's much worse around these really productive farmlands and frankly kind of more biodiverse areas like western New York. So just a kind of narrative that I think gets lost sometimes is how severe wetlands loss is, even when compared to habitat loss of upland habitat.
Then why should we care about wetlands?
Good question. So wetlands are pound for pound, just, and a lot of your listeners probably know this, but pound for pound much more biologically productive and diverse than upland habitat. There's a lot more habitat niches when water is at least seasonally present or present for all of the year.
Yeah.
A lot more niches.
Not to diss upland habitats, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love upland habitats.
Sure.
And it's really nice that we just walked through this beautiful hemlock northern hardwood forest to get out to the lakeshore, because it's the only finger of upland habitat in this area. But those wetland habitats are really, really critical to a lot of species, plants, animals, amphibians, birds. And they're disappearing at a faster rate than upland habitats. So it's just something I think makes this property even more unique, and some of the other properties in this kind of complex we're building here, like the floating fen, which is a really threatened type of wetland. So,
And talk about, I know it doesn't necessarily apply to where we're standing, but more to wetlands in general. So recently, with the Western New York Land Conservancy, some drone footage was taken that We've talked about at meetings and really blew my mind how the drone footage of an area that was flooded.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that?
That was Black Creek Preserve in Allegheny County.
Yeah. And tell the folks about that.
Yeah. So Black Creek Preserve is a nature preserve we just purchased and are now doing a lot of cool work on. We actually planted 100 trees there last week, reforesting an old hayfield there. But there's this beautiful creek that runs through Black Creek, and there's a lot of beaver activity in that water body. It's really in a great shape. It's very dynamic. There's a lot of hummock flats and braided channels and like future oxbows, and it's all lined by hemlock. It's really beautiful. But this beaver marsh had kept a big chunk of that creek basically in aquatic habitat. When we purchased it, we had only ever seen it for multiple years. It's essentially a lake that we're purchasing, shallow aquatic habitat. So one day a group went down there and they're like, the lake's gone. And a huge storm had made water levels rise and blew out this beaver dam that had been there for years and years. And it just went back to a shallow braided channel.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just interesting and shows, that's an example of wetlands. One of the amazing parts of wetlands that's not biological is all the ecosystem services they provide.
Right.
So flood mitigation, pollutant filtration, these things are all really critical, and without them, that hardened shoreline doesn't do all those things. So there's way more erosion, runoff, beaver dams get blown off, basements flood. Yeah. We need wetlands to function as humans, and our fellow ecosystem neighbors also need them as well.
Yeah. So I don't know if this picture's on the website, but you guys showed two pictures side by side of like it flooded, and then like a couple weeks later, just back to that channel, and you're just like, this is what wetlands are supposed to be doing.
Extremely dynamic, right?
Wow.
It really is, and that was such a great example of that, because it's hard to know that if you're on Casanova Creek or something in South Buffalo, that's not going to happen. It's going to flood or it's not, and that's just so different here, and that also leads to all those disturbance events create opportunities for species to thrive. So. Wetlands are just super critical for a lot of reasons, not just biological, but also those very hard to quantify, very hard to explain to people ecosystem services that are the bedrock of us continuing to exist here. So,
So I'm going to piggyback a little on what you're saying too, because the Bear Lake Preserve, if it comes into being, if it's successful, you're not just protecting the shoreline, you're protecting the woods along it, right?
Correct.
Because I did find a study that blew my mind. Looking at a map of this area, there's farmland less than a mile away from this southern shore, right? So this was a study. It's an older study, 1984. Were you even born then yet, Steve?
No.
This is a pre-Steve study. So in this study, they looked at a watershed that was dominated by agriculture. And they installed these groundwater sampling wells across a 50-meter wide strip of natural riparian forest between an active field and a receiving stream channel. So they measured the concentrations of nutrients. In that forest buffer, which really wasn't that big, they said 50-meter wide it seemed, removed 97% of the total suspended solids from the runoff, and it retained 89% of the nitrogen and 80% of the phosphorus before it could enter the aquatic system.
Wow.
So the majority of the nitrogen, it was removed from denitrification. Steve?
What? Denitrification?
I'm sorry, I keep putting you on the spot.
No, it's just the uptake of nitrogen, so it's not causing algal blooms or whatever.
Yes, and Bear Lake, we're surrounded by rural and agricultural landscape. So not just the immediate shoreline, but also the forest that you guys are working to protect. That's important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of standing at the edge of the water line right now. And the real gem of this property is, yes, it's shoreline, natural shoreline, but that mosaic of wetland communities that goes back into the property for almost 311 acres. There's very little upland here. So
that ecotone we were talking about.
Right. And so a majority of that acreage is various types of wetland, whether it's shrub swamp, which is most of it, deep water emergent marsh, shallow water emergent marsh, silver maple ash swamp, floodplain forest. There's a whole bunch of stuff here.
Wow.
Headwater marsh stream is another ecosystem, ecotype here. That's what we're really protecting here. So it's all of those intact processes that we're protecting, not just the shoreline, which is also critical, but it's really what happens just beyond the shoreline that is so important.
Yeah, and that's going to benefit not just the wildlife here, but also the people on the other side over there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's so cool that the people that are here, like you said, they've been working to protect the ecology of the lake too.
For sure.
That's great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the middle of the lake is not owned by anyone. So they've definitely been instrumental, and some of the aquatic invasive species are a total mess right now. There's lots to do. We actually don't own a lot of aquatic habitats, so I haven't personally worked with a lot of them, but it's something we're going to be reading up on for sure to continue to protect this lake, which one of the fun facts about the lake, before we go into the wetlands further, is it's called a dimictic lake. So a dimictic lake is a lake that fully mixes from top to bottom twice per year.
Oh.
So typically once in the spring and once in the fall. So during summer and winter, the lake stratifies into layers of different temperatures, but during cooler transitional seasons, the water equalizes in temperature and wind can circulate oxygen and nutrients throughout the entire lake. So that kind of happens twice a year, 2 big turnover events. Just a cool lake classification thing. I haven't managed aquatic habitat before, so I was having fun researching some of this stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And how deep is the lake? Did you say that?
It's shallow. Nursery water, again. So you got that really shallow transition with some minerally charged groundwater kind of coming up, keeping this where it's at, as well as the small watershed. But it's an average of 10 feet, deepest point's 35 feet.
Wow, that's shallow.
Yep.
'Cause I know, as someone that works in the Great Lakes, Lake Erie is so kind of special because how shallow it is.
Right.
And the species diversity is so much higher. So what, is there like an estimate of the species diversity here, or how does it compare with?
Sure. Fishery-wise, largemouth bass, northern pike, smallmouth bass, pumpkin seed, bluegill, yellow perch, black bullhead, and then it's pretty famous for its tiger muskie fishery and walleye.
Cool.
Most likely stocked, but they do really well here. It's a big attraction. One of the cool things here is the boat launch. New York State DC owns a boat launch that we were all standing at before, kind of getting an overview of this property.
Yeah.
So anybody can come paddle Bear Lake, and then hopefully if folks help us protect this place, we'll have a landing here. So you can go for a paddle, park your canoe, come up, hike the trails, paddle
Nice.
back to the car. So
Very cool.
Cool.
yeah.
Wow. And just say again, how many acres is the lake?
Sure. So the lake itself is 114 acres. And then there's 2.5 miles of shoreline, which I mentioned earlier in the episode, 67% or so approximately of that is undeveloped. So
Beautiful. Can we head back into the woods, because we're getting some wind on the mic here? For sure. So we were talking about some of the fish that are in the lake. Can you give us an idea of like some of the other wildlife, plants, animals?
Some of
Yeah.
the cooler ones.
well, I will say this. There's a great black bear population here, which is really cool, which I've seen one here. Big, fuzzy,
Very
cuddly
cool.
guy. Saw him up real close. It was really fun. But also, we were actually just here shooting some video to kind of introduce people to this property. And I was out here with a photographer, and I think we had 40 bird species last week that I heard or saw walking him around out here. So
Cool.
huge migratory bird hotspot. Obviously, it's a really good time of year for that right now when we're
Yeah.
recording this in early May.
I was gonna say, you kind of did a mini birdathon, it sounds like.
Very much so, and I was able to, he was able to get some on camera, which was really cool.
Cool.
So really great for birds. I mentioned it's a core area of the Western New York Wildway. The way we kind of come up with core areas is, one of the metrics is we did this big wildlife movement analysis, and essentially there's enough intact habitat here that even our big charismatic megafauna like black bears, who females have a home range of 10 square miles, I believe, can thrive here. So
Nice.
it's big for our mammals. It's big for migrating birds, so stuff other than plants. And also the amphibian habitat here with this crazy diversity of wetlands is really cool. There's a little bit of what we New York ecologists call hemlock hardwood peat swamp, which a lot of times there's four-toed salamanders and other cool stuff in.
That's cool.
We're actually coming up on that area now. So amazing wildlife habitat, and I was mentioning the continuity of all the protected properties around here. That's really when you start seeing more wildlife, is when you can protect big swaths where wildlife can move and spread their genes and across the landscape foraging. That genetic diversity is really tough here in Western New York because, like I said, that 70-acre parcel size, we have this super fragmented landscape. So I think we're at 60% forest cover since the 19th century, when everything in the state essentially was burnt to the ground or cleared. Mm-hmm. But that number's a little bit trickier when you're talking about especially Western New York, because we're so fragmented here. Yes, there's a lot of forest cover, but a lot of it is not in very good shape, and it's in these little islands that is not very useful for wildlife. So when we're talking about our bigger wildlife, this continuity, landscape scale, corridor creation is really what we want to be all about.
Right, and I think that's one of the great things that land trusts like the Western New York Land Conservancy are doing, is there's been the shift from kind of this island conservation model,
Yeah.
which was such a big part of the 20th century. Now we realize, no, wildlife needs room to move.
Absolutely.
So it's much more now all about connecting wildlands.
Yep. It's not just about trying to find a rare population anymore and just, hey, let's protect this.
The spot.
Let's look at how the dynamics are across the landscape. I kind of think of it as like treating the root cause rather than the symptom in medicine. It's like
Right.
getting to that root cause and thriving wildlife that way rather than kind of chasing.
And you throw climate change into the mix, and like,
Right.
everything's got to move.
Yes. See, this is why I like hockey. It's
Very simple.
A lot less complicated. All right, so what else is here? There's got to be fisher here, right?
There's definitely fisher here.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. I love the mustelids. This is amazing deep forest habitat for fisher. Seen them a bunch on wildlife cameras already. Great habitat for beaver, obviously. This whole mosaic is heavily influenced by beaver. We were looking at some, what was probably formerly more swamp that's converted to more emergent marsh habitat, likely due to beaver activity. Not sure about otters, but would hope they're around. I know there's some around Chautauqua Lake, so I would kind of expect them too. Another cool mustelid. But yeah, really good. And this intact forest too. Maybe this is weird after the chronic wasting disease episode, but as an ecologist and land manager in Western New York, one of my biggest headaches is deer overabundance and deer browse issues. Deer being very great generalists that adapt very well to the human, that fragmented landscape that I keep coming back to.
Right.
They love that.
How many times are they in your backyard? You know.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So suburbia, agriculture, and forest mix, all that edge habitat, that's where deer thrive, that's where invasive species thrive. So whenever we can get a bunch of protected area together that has close canopy forests already, we're creating this kind of barrier from those issues. Deer population can at least be controlled a little bit in this area then. So just really critical in that sense too.
All right, so what about some plants?
Sure. There's really no weakness to this property. Everything's amazing. but definitely a high level strength is the plant diversity here because of all those mosaic of wetlands. So a big part of the shoreline is what we call a shrub swamp. So it's called a swamp because it's dominated by woody vegetation. It's called a shrub swamp because the woody vegetation that is dominant is shrubs, which all this can be confusing, but essentially two really critical shrubs anchor that whole system. And it's all built on this kind of mucky, wet soils that are really shallow, that spread out beyond that aquatic lake shore. And the two species that really anchor that system are speckled alder is one, and then also buttonbush, which is a really cool native shrub, has this really beautiful flower.
Yeah.
Buttonbush is important for Mendon ponds too. That's another place that I see a ton of it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and also Iroquois. If you go to Swallow Hollow, there's a lot of buttonbush all along the trail too.
Yep. So Mendon Ponds is up near Rochester, right?
Yeah.
So one of the cool things when I was looking into speckled alder, it's a plant I haven't worked a ton with, but it's a good indicator of a wetland that hasn't been disturbed. It's one of those plants that there's a lot of created wetlands or remnant wetlands that have been highly disturbed, and the plants you're going to see here are very sensitive to that disturbance and generally don't show up. So speckled alder is one where if I see that in buttonbush, I know this wetland's in pretty good shape.
Is that Ulmus glutinosa, or is that another one that's a nitrogen fixer?
Incana, it's Incana rugosa, Ulmus Incana rugosa.
Oh,
Also
okay.
a nitrogen fixer, which I was going to mention. Really cool plant and has some really cool cultural history too. It's kind of like a red-orange dye that was used in porcupine quill embroidery by indigenous groups, so I thought that was really cool. And it indicates really rich mineral groundwater, which you guys talked about with us back in the day when you were at floating fen. It's one of the reasons a fen is that mineral-rich groundwater. So also indicates that, which I thought was cool. Another one is buttonbush. Really cool. They look like the minesweeper icon.
Yes,
the flowers.
they do. You're right.
And they're throughout the shrub swamp here. And
Minesweeper. I thought you were trying to make like a kids these days kind of cool.
Minecraft?
Yeah, Minecraft. I was like,
Oh, no,
I haven't
I'm
thought
older
about
than that. Yeah.
I haven't thought about Minesweeper in so long.
But just a really cool shrub. Really critical pollinator plant. Those flowers, they go crazy. One of the best ways to see Bear Lake is actually by boat. So one of the ways that I've gotten out here is just canoeing the shoreline. And I went kind of like the height of summer last year, and I've really never heard a cacophony of insects like I did that day. Just kind of going along that shrub swamp. I've really never seen so many bumblebees or pollinators, butterflies, just really amazing insect diversity, which I thought was really awesome. And that deep water marsh has pickerel weed, which is another really cool native aquatic plant that one of those plants that can float. It stores water in its tissue and lives right on that wetland edge and has these huge purple flowers that are gorgeous. So apparently culturally too with that one, the seeds are edible. I didn't know about that.
They taste good.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge edibles expert. So
A lot of the plants you're mentioning,
yeah.
they were at Beaver Meadows when I worked there and lived there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we delved into a lot of that stuff.
That's cool.
Because that's a relatively undisturbed wetland.
Yeah.
Too,
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple other cool plants that are the fern diversity is really high, and it's ferns you don't see in the uplands. So royal fern, marsh fern, really cool species that grow on little hummocks. So lots of decomposed plants over the years will kind of pile up and then it'll stick out of the water and it creates a little micro habitat for things to germinate in. So you'll see these little circles of those fern species. And
very cool.
I don't see those around a lot either, just being in mostly upland forest.
I do have to say, you're right about the birds. I know we're talking about plants, but just as we're walking, I'm just like ticking off in my head.
Right?
Red start.
Yep, lots of red
bird
starts.
Yeah.
A lot of palm warblers like this area. There's tons of palm warblers always. Lots of brown creepers and Louisiana water thrush and black-throated green. Just a lot of warblers. It's really fun.
Everyone, another reason to save. Bear Lake.
Buttonbush is special to me because I can never remember its genus. I never remember if it's Cephalotus or Cephalanthus. One of those is a carnivorous pitcher plant. The other one is buttonbush.
Pretty different.
Yeah, very, very different.
All right, so before we wrap up, do you have anything else that you want to share about the property, the project with the audience?
Sure. So one thing I was thinking is just, what does this property look like if we are able to conserve it? And kind of what's our process once we do that? We really like to and take any opportunity to create public access at our nature preserves when we purchase them. So the way we kind of approach public access is we establish our conservation values at the property. So we talked about this at length today. And when we do our design for the public access, we just want to make sure that none of those are being affected negatively, either now or in the future based on what we do and what infrastructure kind of goes in here. So natural surface trails, we like to use existing infrastructure if there is any. We talked about how most of New York State was logged in the 19th century, and even more recently, most properties that we purchase will have some kind of logging road network on it. We'll often try to use that just so that we don't disturb areas that aren't already disturbed. We want to create disturbance on areas that already were disturbed. So in the case of Bear Lake here, there actually is an access road. So we'll likely have a trail going down this access road, small parking area. But we do that in a really careful way, and it takes a lot of data gathering ahead of time before we decide to create public access. Sometimes we don't if it's a really sensitive area, but this is one where it's really conducive to public access. There's this great kind of flat, chill hike out to this beautiful view. We're also going to have a landing where if you launch your canoe or kayak at the DEC launch that's across Bear Lake, you can paddle right up to what will be the Bear Lake Preserve, get out, have your boat on the shore, do your hike, come back to your boat, paddle right back across the lake, and call it a day. So a little multi-sport day, which would be fun.
Very cool. Yeah.
Josh had actually suggested folks via text, hey, have you guys ever recorded an episode via canoe?
I did.
Which sounds awesome, but I think that might be a challenge.
Yeah.
I kind of figured it might be, especially the wind we have today was
that's
pretty
true.
incredible.
Yeah.
But I do really recommend folks, if you want to check this property out, obviously we need your help to fundraise and get that next half chunk that we need to fundraise for this property. But it is really awesome to see by boat or by land. So we're going to have both those as opportunities for folks to enjoy this beautiful landscape here.
So if someone wants to support it, what do they do? Go
to our website, WNYLC.org. You can also go to WNYLC.org/Bear Lake. Read all about the property. There's all kinds of cool maps, photos. We have got a donate button there and would love to hear from you and would love people to get involved in saving this amazing place.
All right. Now, I didn't run this by Steve, but I'm sure you'll agree that our patrons, on behalf of them, we can make a donation to support the cause, right?
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say this at the beginning, but I'm a big fan of the field guide, so I just wanted to say long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's awesome.
This is one way to get in contact with us. So.
It would have been better at the beginning. Maybe put it in at the beginning.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for doing this. we have a lot of guests on, but you are awesome. Super easy to talk with.
Thank you.
I don't think we're going to have to do much editing on this one.
No, I think it'll be pretty easy.
I'll do this one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, it was an honor and a privilege, and thanks Steve and Bill for coming out and always supporting us and our work. We really appreciate it, and science communication is everything these days, so what you guys do is critical, and we all really appreciate it. So
Well, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
But what you guys are doing is even
Yeah.
more so. So
hey, let's both keep doing what we're doing.
Sure.
Sounds good. Pat each other on the
Let's
back.
call it even. Let's see what we're doing.
Yeah. And go Sabres.
folks, we'll put all the information up on the website. And Josh, one more thing while I'm thinking of it,
Yeah.
because folks, we're recording this in May of 2026. When is the deadline?
We have to get this property protected and purchased by the end of this year, by the end of 2026. So,
All right, so we got about 6-7 months, folks.
6-7 months.
All right.
Hopefully I convinced you, and we would really appreciate it. So thank
Goes
you.
by quick.
Our listeners
So,
are going to come through, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, folks, Steve and I, we're going to record the outro at another location. Mm-hmm. All right, but Josh, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, I just lied because Steve is not here. I am in my backyard with Violet.
Hello.
And our intention was to record the outro at the Allegheny Nature Pilgrimage. So longtime listeners will know that that's an event that happens up here in Western New York every year, the weekend after Memorial Day. And it's a big gathering of nature enthusiasts, really coming from all over. Most people come from Western New York, but there's walks and talks about tons of nature topics all weekend long. It's one of Violet's favorite weekends of the year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Steve and I lead a hike there every year, and I thought we would do the outro there, but I forgot to bring the mic.
Aw.
And then Steve had to leave because his son was sick. So we're hoping Steve's son feels better. And folks, you get to enjoy the sounds of Violet and I doing the outro from the backyard.
Yeah.
All right, so before we start the outro proper, we want to give a shout out to an Instagram page, Down Dirt Roads. It's subtitled Trail Tales from a Conservation Researcher. And this influencer was nice enough to give us a shout out in a recent post titled Podcasts and Books You'll Love If You're Obsessed with Nature. She had us listed, obviously, as one of those podcasts to listen to. So thank you, and folks, check out Down Dirt Roads. All right. So first and foremost, we want to thank our growing list of Patreon supporters. So thank you to our new patron, Wild Feel Music.
We'd also like to give a special shout out each month to our top patrons. So stick around for the end of the episode to hear me read the patron list. And remember, if you'd like to be part of the Field Guides and read our patron list in a future episode, email us at thefieldguides@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to support the podcast, consider becoming a patron of our show at patreon.com. As a patron, you'll get access to a special patrons-only version of the episode that includes me sharing the episode notes. Because of support from our listeners, we've been able to keep the show free and make cooler episodes like one that's going to be coming out very soon, where we take a trip down to Alabama and record a podcast with our friend Matt Candeas and his podcast, In Defense of Plants.
Ooh.
Or you can make a one-time donation through PayPal on our website. And a big thank you goes out to listener Eric B. for his recent donation.
Remember, you can always help out the podcast by sharing it with friends and family, and by subscribing and leaving us a review wherever you get your podcast. It helps spread the word and allows us to reach a wider audience. We'd like to thank our newest iTunes reviewer, Marie U12.
Come enjoy our sporadic posts on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram. And you can always email us ideas for episode topics, criticisms, or your stories of personal encounters with inland coastal waterways to thefieldguides@gmail.com. And parents, remember to get those kids outside. Let them get muddy, let them get dirty, let them flip over rocks and logs. And if you don't have kids, please make some time to get yourself outside. Now, this is normally where we'd say, see you next time, but
I wrote a little spiel myself.
no, not yet.
Oh.
Because for this special episode, since we're helping out the Western New York Land Conservancy, we want to reach as many people as possible. I'm actually going to share the episode notes with everyone for this episode. Is that okay? Can you listen while I do this? All right, so first, during the episode, I boldly threw out a bit of local lore suggesting that Western New York's favorite daughter, Lucille Ball, once stayed at a cottage on Bear Lake. But I diligently searched after recording online for any evidence that this thing was true, and I came up empty.
Oh.
Lucy did grow up on the shores of nearby Chautauqua Lake in Celoron, and she spent many summers during the peak of her popularity escaping to Chenango Lake in eastern New York, but there is no official record of her hiding out at Bear Lake.
Aw.
Also, later on in the episode, I referenced Dale McGrath's excellent book, Flight Paths, subtitled A Field Journal of Hope, Heartbreak, and Miracles with New York's Bird People. And I misidentified Hemlock Lake as one of the state's first eagle hacking sites. Now, while I was correct in remembering that Hemlock Lake was mentioned in the book, I was confused about the context. In reality, Hemlock Lake played a much more poignant role because it was home to the very last known native nesting pair of bald eagles in New York State. So I remembered it was in the book, but I didn't remember the right spot that it was in the book. As we talked about in an earlier episode, The True Story of the Bald Eagle, by the late 1970s, chemical contamination from DDT had devastated bald eagle populations, and that lonely Hemlock Lake pair was all that remained of any bald eagles in the entire state. So the pioneering hacking program that I was thinking of actually was launched nearby at the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. And then finally, we questioned why the south shore of Bear Lake stayed wild when the north shore was developed into cottages. And a major piece of that puzzle comes down to local history, because from the 1920s through the 1970s, the land was home to a YMCA camp. And local authors Bob and Ann Deming, who Josh mentioned as key people in aiding the effort to save Bear Lake, they published a book mapping out that camp's history. They were inspired by a single chapter in their debut book, A History of Bear Lake, and that book was recently updated and re-released. So they dove deeper into the archives and published a whole book about the camp. It was called Camp in the Woods. And it's a collection of photos and firsthand accounts from nearly 500 former campers and staff members. Now, if you go to the episode page, folks, we're going to put in links to their author page, and there's also an article talking more about their book, Camp in the Woods. We want to give a special thanks to Andrew Gertie, the Western New York Land Conservancy's Director of Development and Communications, for sharing this history with us. And now, Violet, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, now this is the part where I normally read the patrons, but before I do that, I'd just like to give a big thanks to all the people that came on the Skeptical Naturalist program, led by the field guides, at this year's annual Allegheny Nature Pilgrimage. Best time ever. Also, another congratulations to Marilyn for winning our Skeptical Naturalist trivia game.
Yeah.
All right, here come the patrons. Ahem. Eric, Alyssa, Adam, Colin G, Mary B, Renz, Abby, Dr. Judy, Kimberly B, Peter R, Callie, the Hebranks, Rich K, Rachel L, the Drunk Phytologist, Orange Julianne, Diane, We Named the Dog Indy, Hot Dog Cold Weather, Dwayne H, Jennifer D, Jonathan A, JDR, Karen E, Deborah B, Are the Plants in the Room with Us Now, Jeremy M, Lori B, Licky Weeks, Virginia A, Catherine W, Holly M, Michaela, Val, John R, Evan, Picasso 3, Mark T, Cecilia, Julie B, Dennis, Chris N, Sung, Jeff S, Jonathan K, Matt E, Plants in My Pants, Ryan R, Sophie S, Connor H, Measure and Principal, Frigari at Papaloinidea, Outside Chronicles, Quixote, Max D, Melissa Marie in Dusty, Arizona, Kelly S, Sarah S, Helen A, Judy F, Ben C, Jane H, Doodle Dude 82, Gallon Mac, Kazis, Esther C, John W, Mark V, Bethany H, Rob M. Whew!
And you know what, folks? Violet's such a pro that when I printed out this list today, I made the columns too small and many of those names got cut off. But wow, you remembered what they all were.
Yeah, I'm awesome like that.
Very impressive. And patrons, on behalf of Steve, who can't be here right now, I know he would agree with me that your support does mean the world to us. Thank you so much. We will continue to try to live up to it. Thank you, Violet.
You're welcome.
And folks, we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Say or.
Or you can make a one-time donation.
Hang on, sorry. My phone keeps dinging. Turn it off.
You should keep all of this in. It's really funny.
It's gold.
I'd like to hear it more than just regular cut it.